this week's edition of Haunted Historians. With me this week is author Rod Smith, non-author Declan Doyle, and very non-author myself, Sean Murray. How are you getting on, lads?
Not a bother, Sean. Thanks very much. Yourself?
Good, good, good. We're on the eve of the American election, so I'm a little
Yes.
bit nervous about that.
Yeah.
But hopefully not too distracted by it. Um, and how are you getting on? How's life in Waterford, Deck?
I can't believe you called me a non-author. Like,
What,
there's
what, do you
lots of
know?
non-things.
Oh dear.
Do you know something,
There's lots
Deck?
of non-things I am. Non-loads of things.
I was thinking, like, I was kind of going
Non.
the 1996 census, like we kind of authored that. If you want to go,
Yeah.
like you gotta think about it this way, Deck, right? Don't focus on focus on the days we weren't stoned in Stephen's Green, right?
Okay.
And we contributed greatly towards that document, you know.
Right.
What
And
day was that?
that's kind of history in itself, you know.
Yeah, that could be another topic for another show. It
Yeah,
seems like
yeah,
that could fill a whole show, I think.
yeah. So right, that's your next book, Rodney.
Okay, next book. Yeah, I'll have to. I might have to fictionalize part of it, chaps, and change the names. I'll call it Shane and Donny. Nobody will ever know it's about Sean and
No,
Becky. No one
no,
will ever know.
no.
Right. Okay. First up this week we have young Declan Doyle. And what have you got for us this week, Declan?
I'm off to Canada.
Canada. Okay.
Canada. Yeah.
That's not very very
In particular,
interesting, but not
Toronto.
very historic.
Now,
Let the
but this
man
goes back to
speak, Rodney.
1855. Yeah, yeah. Or I'll non-kill you. Goes back to 1855 when Toronto was a fledgling town, you know. Well, it was a city, but it was fledgling. There wasn't many people in it. It had a population of 40,000, which for the city isn't a lot, you know. Now, it was predominantly a Catholic population, but it had a ruling class who were members of the Orange Order. Now, in this town, there was a woman called Mary Ann Armstrong, and she ran a brothel, which is all fine. At the time, it was absolutely fine. Many of our patrons were members of the ruling classes, and a lot of the police, a lot of the main jobs in the state or in the town ran the services like the police, all orange men. The fire service at the time were private enterprises. They weren't run by the state or the cities, and they were private enterprises. And one group in particular was called the Hook and Ladder, and they were one of the more notorious ones. Now, when fires broke out in Toronto, you just didn't phone the fire brigade. They couldn't have found the fire, but because it was competition for the fires, you know, whoever put it out got the money for putting it out. You know, there'd be a bit of scrapping going on. Now, there was no horses pulling these fire engines. They're all pushed by men. So these are big stocking lads, you know, because they're carrying water a whole lot, and hoses weren't a thing. So imagine the big stropping lads. So one evening in 1855, the circus came to town. Okay, now normally for this circus, they were one of the bigger circuses in America. They were to do S.P. Howard's Star Troop, Menagerie and Circus. They're one of the biggest circuses in America at the time. But for some reason or other, they normally arrive in a town, do the show, and they'd be gone. But they did 2 nights in Toronto, which meant when they arrived, they set up, they had the night off. So the clowns headed down to Mary Ann Armstrong's house for some evening entertainment, and they met. Now, the stories are a lot shady what happened, but it kicked off between the clowns and the firemen. Now, this became known as the Great Clown Riot. The name itself is superb, of the 1850s. It spilled out into the street. Now, the police were called, and obviously, they've been friends with the fire services, weren't really interested in protecting the circus people. So it went on overnight anyway. The following day, all the circus people went back to their camp, and the firemen attacked them again. This time, burned their tents, burning the circus. I'm not certain of any fatalities. I don't think there was. Some of them fled into lakes. There was absolute carnage. This went on for days. The townsfolk of Toronto at the time had quite enough of this carried on by the police and the fire services. They were just violent thugs, you know. So the judiciary was all involved, because anyone that was caught in acting the violence was brought before to trial, and everyone got off. Everybody did. And this infuriated the townsfolk people even further, because there was no justice for anybody. They felt like they were being completely controlled by a bunch of people who were hell-bent on them not even being accepted as human beings, like everywhere else. They were trying to build a Northern Ireland state in Canada. They're based on the same principles. There was such an uproar over it. Within the next 3 years, the whole judiciary was changed. Elections were brought in. Everyone in the police force was sacked, a bit like the RIC coming to PSNI. They had to change all the names. So basically, it brought civility and the birth of proper democracy into Toronto, and all because some clowns and firemen had a go in the brothel. Yeah.
I couldn't make that one up.
That's a unique one. Yeah, I don't even know begin to. Yeah, I'm not even going to begin to try and figure out where you got that from. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd say by 1859, the whole thing had been dismantled. The entire hierarchy of the town, and the Irish Army lost their grip on the whole place. And then the town started thriving. Like, it was 40,000 people then. It grew dramatically over the next number of years, because it was deemed a safe place to live in, a safe place to trade with. Because these people were running amok. They had control over everything the way they wanted it. And these were hardcore Protestant Christians.
Hey.
We know what they're like, you know. So there you go.
Fantastic, Dick. Thanks very much. Clowns, policemen, Christians, and Protestants. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
All in the brothel. And it was Friday the 13th as well.
Well, that's fantastic.
Of course it was.
Just vivid images of clowns and beating the head off each other.
No, big feet, truncheons, buckets of confetti.
Carnage.
Yeah. And yet societal change.
Canadian clown carnage, I think, would be the headline I'd put on that. That's fantastic, then. You're making clowns scarier than they already are, which is scary enough.
I never liked clowns. I never was a huge fan of
Or
clowns.
heroes.
Yeah.
Or heroes.
Or heroes, yeah. And never a fan of clowns. I never found clowns kind of funny.
Yeah.
They're just awkward.
Scary.
Yeah. Anyway, geez, thanks so much, Dick. Roz, what have you got for us?
No clowns. Bit of religion, though. You can always good to include a bit of religion in, and I suppose with the night that's in it, where we may have history being made in a certain country across the waters, I thought we'd have a look back into the history of the Catholic Church in the 800s, around the year 850 or so. And there was a pope at the time, apparently called John Anglicus, who was pope for just over 2 years. Now, the interesting thing about John Anglicus was John was actually Joan, Pope Joan. There was in history a woman who was a pope for 2 years. A lot of records have been scrubbed and accounts have been wiped over the hundreds and hundreds of years since this happened. So it is now, a lot of the truth has faded into the mists of time to see, was it true? Is it a legend? Did it really happen? But the story as it goes is that this lady, who was either English or German, was very clever, very educated woman, and she took a certain number of lovers across Europe, and she would dress as a man that she could travel around Europe freely. And she ended up in Rome, where she was such, again, very clever and talented person. She came to the attention of the Vatican and got some senior roles in the Vatican, ultimately became a cardinal, and eventually then became the Pope for this 2-year period. Now, during this 2-year period, she was having an affair with a nobleman, and she became pregnant, which was a bit of an obstacle, shall we say, for somebody who's supposed to be practicing celibacy, as we know all priests have since the year dot. So what happened was, nobody knew about it. She would just wear robes that were long and flowing. And there was a procession one day where the Pope was going through the streets of Rome, and she started to give birth. And then the people around realized very quickly, hang on a second, this isn't right. The Pope's a woman. So there's two versions of the story. One version is that the crowd attacked Pope Joan and killed her and the child immediately. The other version is that actually they captured and imprisoned Joan, but they let her live into old age with her child in a safe area. However, as a result of the incident that happened that day, legend has it that whenever the Pope is doing his travels or sojourns along the certain streets of Rome, he will always avoid this particular patch of road or street where this incident happened, because it's a great source of shame for the church at the time. Over the years, then, this wouldn't have been mentioned. It only came up in writings again in the 1200s and 1300s, which led people to believe, well, it's making up, it's not really a story, it never really happened. However, an interesting fact, an interesting rule that they introduced for whatever reason before or after Joan took the throne was they introduced this special chair for any cardinal who was elected Pope would sit in this chair, and this chair would have a hole in it. And the Pope would sit on this chair which had a hole in it, and he would drop his undergarments, but he would still have the robe covering anything that was delicate or not privy to the public. And a cardinal would put his hand up through the hole in the chair to make sure that what was expected there was found there. And then he would say in Latin, yes, I found what I'm expecting, and everything is bouncy and dangly, and yes, we're good to go. This person can be Pope. And some of these chairs can actually be seen in the Vatican Museum now at the moment. And they're still there, so they did exist and they did do it. So the question must be, if there wasn't a woman at the time, why did they introduce this rule going forward to make sure that it was a person? Over the years now, you've actually had some movies. You've had two movies, one in the 1970s and one about 10 years ago, made about Pope Joan. You've also had a play, you've also had a book, and you've also had a number of stories. And there's various opinions as to whether the story is real or not real, or if it's made up, or if it's a warning to women, don't be taking on roles that you're not supposed to take on. And hopefully people across the water aren't listening to this. And it was a warning to women not to get involved in things that weren't of their own making, that to leave it to the men. So that was the legend of Pope Joan. You'll find lots and lots of information and about it, and over the centuries, particularly then when you had the Renaissance and the Reformation as well, you had people on the Reformation side saying, sure, look what the church got up to, and hundreds of years ago you had a woman as Pope. It's not the true church at all. So there are a lot of writings and scribblings out there, and there is that piece of that street. But it's one of those, again, in the midst of time, we're not sure, did it or did it not happen? But legend has it, in the 850s, for 2 years, Pope Joan gave birth, and that was the end of Pope Joan. And there's never been a woman on the Vatican since, and that is the story of Joan, the Pope, who may or may not have been, or may not have existed.
Very good. I did not know about that.
There you go.
It kind of, I vaguely, from years ago, but I kind of thought it was a maybe uppy story, but that's fantastic, Rod. I did not know that.
They are nice.
Um, oh,
I was
Joan,
just
that's mad about the seats as well.
Yes.
If you're caught, I was thinking like if you're caught short, like that was like I
Yes.
was thinking that was what was coming, but I didn't realize there
There
was
you
a two
go.
that kind of a glory hole aspect to it.
And you'll
It's sort
see,
of
yeah.
glory.
And you'll see, as I say, and that's why you'll see them in, they do have one or two of them in their museums there. So they did exist and they were being used. So obviously they were afraid that maybe, a non-male might be getting to the role. So that they obviously decided we better just check just to be sure, to be sure.
to paraphrase Sharon Corley from The Snapper. It's like 2 eggs in a hanky.
That is mad. That's
Wow.
mad. I'd
They
be
are.
interested in one of those
But
seats.
the early days of the Catholic Church were incredibly corrupt. Like the Medici family ran amok with them as
Oh,
well,
yes. Oh,
So there was all
absolutely.
sorts of skullduggery going on with who was putting in place of the Pope. And, it wasn't the usual cardinal crack with the smoke, although
Oh,
whatever
absolutely. For
nefarious carry
sure,
on
yeah.
on now. But there was many factors going into it. So I'd heard about Joan before on the chair,
Right.
But yeah, they've a dodgy past and a future.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank God.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's God, the Catholic Church is taking a hit so far on these podcasts, but however, and the poor out folks.
Oh, they
But
can take it. They can take it, I think. They can take it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Some of it warranted, we'd have to say.
Yes.
Um, that's brilliant. Thanks so much, Ross.
Excellent.
Very,
Excellent.
very enlightening. Okay, well, I'll go ahead.
Yep, yep.
I'm kind of varying it up completely this week, and I'm going to go with cats again. And I'm going to go with kind of a cat's prequel,
Ooh.
as it were. Because as I think from the start of last week's episode, I had mentioned that cats came to Europe from the Romans. So I'm going to kind of I got interested in cats from Egypt. So I got interested in cats in Egypt, and the poor old cat. um, Not only were they involved in the bubonic plague, they're also involved in the fall of the ancient Egyptian empire. Um, so, just a brief history, cats, they kind of self-domesticated in Egypt in about 10,000 years ago. And what happened was they were killing vermin on agricultural land, and the Egyptians were so kind of pleased that they started feeding them and petting them. So the cats started going, okay, there's something in this for us. They started hanging out with the humans. And kind of ancient Egyptians, they kind of worshipped many different kind of animals. Like dogs were kind of valued for their ability to kind of hunt, but cats were very special. They believed they kind of were kind of magical creatures and capable of bringing good luck to anyone who had a cat in the house as well. Um, and there was an ancient goddess that is associated with cats, a goddess called Bastet. And she was the goddess of kind of the home, fertility, and women. And so the ancient Egyptians kind of believed that that the essence of Bastet was in cats. Not they knew cats weren't deities, but they believed that these gods had kind of some essence within them. So cats, they were worshipped, and they were worshipped not just because of that, because domestically they were killing, including killing rats, and Egypt was about or killing mice, because Egypt was a very the society thrived on grain, and so they were very grain dependent as well, and so the cats were getting rid of the rodents, so it was a real two-way love affair, and they were also great at the time around snakes and scorpions and other more deadly pests that could get into your house. So the pharaohs absolutely worship cats. They used to dress them in gold and jewels, and used to actually the pharaohs let them eat off their plates with them. And obviously all the servants and everyone else would be told to leave the room. The cats were able to sit and eat with the pharaohs from their plates. And kind of it became kind of a trend then when I suppose your regular class was looking at the pharaohs, their interest in the cats, and so cats became a real go-to for homeowners at the time as well, and they were not just a thing for killing mice. They were really where like kind of worshipped. And like when people died during this period, they would mummify their cats, obviously before death, but they'd be buried with the cats, hoping that they'd be reunited in the afterlife. A whole cemetery, pet cemetery, was discovered of mummified cats in Egypt as well. Um, and the stories about when Egyptians' houses were burning, the first thing they'd go for was to make sure the cat was out of the house. And if it, when a cat died, as a sign of mourning, they'd shave off their eyebrows. The whole family or the whole home would shave off their eyebrows, and they wouldn't stop mourning until the eyebrows grew back. So it's all over Egypt, all these ancient artifacts and paintings and statues, and like the Sphinx is probably the most famous, for its cat-like qualities as well. And there was actually a law in Egypt that anyone who killed a cat, even by accident, could be sentenced to death. So, cats weren't alone. They generally worshipped animals, the Egyptians, but cats kind of had um, a real, they were kind of I was going to say top dogs, but they were the most deified. And unfortunately for the Egyptians, they came a cropper in a thing, a Peruvian invasion. There was a battle of Pelusium, and because of their love of cats, ironically, and this was the 6th century BC, and the Persians, who had a big army at the time, they decided to move in and take over Egypt, and they were ruled by a king called Cambyses II. Now he had a very sneaky idea of going into this. They were quite well matched, but he knew how much the Egyptians worshipped animals and cats in particular. So he got the Persian army as they came up to the Egyptian stronghold to collect as many cats as possible. And they put the cats out in front of all the archers, in front of all a rake of cats. And now there was goats and dogs, there's sheep and dogs as well, but primarily cats. Now the Egyptian army were so scared of hurting a cat, and so they had no idea what to do, so they couldn't fire at them. Then I know they were getting arrows launched at them left, right, and center, but they couldn't fire back. So they basically fled. They downed tools, terrified of the thought of killing a cat. So they actually downed tools. And so the Persians won the battle. And that was pretty much the end of the ancient Egyptians as they were. Because after that, the Persians took over for about 100 years. After that, the Greeks came with Alexander the Great. They kind of ruled for a time as well. And then after that, the Romans invaded in about 30 BC. So the poor old Egyptians, because of their love of cats, that was kind of the end of their sovereignty and all the pharaohs and all that. The pharaohs continued under Persian rule, because the Persians were quite decent in a way and they respected Egyptian rule, but it was never the same. They never had self-rule again, bar small periods of time throughout history. So that's that. That's cats again. For me.
No, that's why I never trusted cats. Never trusted cats. So now at least now I have a reason for not trusting them.
There you go. Yeah.
Few balls of wool wouldn't have gone amiss.
No, absolutely not.
No
Absolutely.
laser pointer here and there.
Yeah, I do feel for the poor old Egyptians and all
Gosh,
this.
yeah.
That's terrible, isn't it?
It was they did worship animals generally, like the sheep and dogs, and it's all you can see the Egyptian mythology and all the symbolism with with that people have with the human body and the animal head, like, but that's That's actually more about worshiping they're all the gods, and it's that animals are godlike. So they put nearly animals above human life.
Yeah.
So it's but it led to their downfall, sadly.
Actually, go to show you the advantages using the psychology of the war, though.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
for picking that, because like that's just an idea. But then again, most things are just ideas, and they go to war over them. But that's just an idea that cats are fantastic, and that brought their downfall. Just the
yeah,
belief in that, you know,
yeah.
it's insane, isn't it?
Poor old beggars, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
There you go.
cats are mad though. No one owns a cat. No, you can't legally own a cat. There's loads of reasons for that. But if you're driving a car and you hit a dog, that belongs to somebody. It's somebody's property. So you have to go on the farm them. If you hit a cat, you don't tell anybody. Because a cat doesn't actually belong to anybody. You can have a cat, but it's not your cat.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
There you
Nobody
go.
thinking,
It kind of ties in with the cat attitude, though.
Yeah.
Cats kind of own people as
They do,
opposed to
they
the other
do.
way around. Yeah, that's mad. I never even thought of that aspect of it. Yeah,
I have a terrible joke. If you want to hear about cats,
go for it, Dick.
One.
it's clean. Rottweiler, German Shepherd, and a cat all died in one accident. Off up to heaven they go. So God looks over at the Rottweiler and goes, "So, tell me, which do I let you in here?" And he goes, "Very loyal, protect the family I was with, you know, all that. Pretty good, you know. That's fantastic. You was sitting me right side. Thanks very much. German Shepherd. It's crack with you. Same buzz. Looked after the family, protected them all, made nothing wrong to them, made nothing happened to them. You know, very good lad. Did all it was told. Very loyal. Oh, you're fantastic. You sit in the left side. Thanks very much. And you, cat." The cat says, "What are you doing in my chair?"
There you go. Like,
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Bastards. Yeah, sorry about that.
no, fantastic. Give the people what they want, Dex. That's it. Absolutely.
That's it. Always ending a joke. Always end. Well, I suppose you started off with clowns and now you finish off with a joke. So that's probably a perfect way to end it. Yeah.
That's brilliant, lads. Listen, thanks so much this evening. I really enjoyed that again, and I'd like to dedicate this show to a mutual friend of ours and friend of the show, Seamus Carr.
Seamus.
Yeah, Seamus. He's our second viewer, along with Tony. So
excellent.
He gets another. I don't know if it's a good sign, lads, that we know all our viewers by name.
I know people. I know people.
We'll battle on anyway. Battle on. Thanks very much, all, and have a good night. Take care. See you soon.
See you guys.
Excellent.